Hey YouTube, Kira Tweak here, bringing you all an update to my Shaddoll Yugioh deck profile for post Ghosts from the Past. With the release of the latest Yu-Gi-Oh set, we were given new support for the Shaddoll deck in the form of 2 new Shaddoll monsters for the main deck, along with the cards we received from the Shaddoll structure deck a while back. I wanted to do an update for you guys. I actually don't believe I ever did an update from the structure deck, I just never got around to it. So with this newest support, I definitely felt we were due for an update with all these awesome cards. The Shaddoll deck was definitely a powerhouse at one point. I wouldn't say it's up, in the top meta, but still very, very viable with all the different play styles you can do, benefiting from your opponent having extra deck monsters on the field, and then just being able to swarm the field with a bunch of different fusion monsters and having plenty of access with the majority of different Shaddoll ones we have. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the Shaddoll monsters, for the new ones, I'm running 2 Nest Shaddoll Genius. With the flip effect, you can target 1 Shaddoll monster you control, and that face-up monster is unaffected by monster effects except for its own this turn. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target 1 effect monster on the field. Neither player can activate that target's effects on the field this turn, and you can only use 1 Nest Shaddoll Genius effect per turn, only once that turn. So whether you use the protection for your boss monsters, most of the time you'll just want to send this card to the graveyard for fusion summoning out. Shaddoll Shekinaga, being the Earth attribute monster needed for summoning this card, is a big help there. And then just being able to rely on that card to then make your Shekinaga have, that power base, and then also make it so one of your opponent's monsters can't activate its effect, taking it to limit more and more what your opponent can do against this card, since Shekinaga can stop monster effects altogether with that play setup. And I also only run 1 of the new Shaddoll Hollow. I definitely find it funny that they got away with the name for this card. Being the fire attribute for the deck also helps for summoning out Shaddoll Grista. With the flip effect, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, and 1 Shaddoll monster with the same attribute from your extra deck, and send it to the graveyard. If you do, banish that monster. If this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard equal to the number of different original attribute among the monsters on the field. You can only use 1 Shaddoll Hollow effect per turn, only once that turn. So not only can this help to set up more Shaddolls in your graveyard, but being able to then send 1 from the extra deck will help with just more fusion options later on with the plays, or just benefiting from the Shaddoll effect of this card when it is sent to the graveyard, being able to then basically recycle. Most Shaddolls specify if it's sent to the graveyard, you can target a Shaddoll spell trap in your graveyard. So not only will Shaddoll Hollow trigger this recycle, I really feel 1 is all you need, because once again, just with the lower numbers, we have plenty of options with our spells in the deck to basically search out different options for what Shaddolls we fusion summon into. And Shaddoll Hollow is definitely needed for going into Shaddoll Grista for that play. Now, for some of the older Shaddolls, before we get to the structure deck ones, I still run 3 Shaddoll Squamata with a flip effect of being able to target and destroy 1 monster on the field. You mostly use this card for when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect. You can send 1 Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard except for Shaddoll Squamata. So along with being able to set up a bunch of different Shaddoll spell and traps to then recycle back to your hand with a bunch of other cards, Squamata having the destruction effect, or just being able to, send Squamata and then another additional Shaddoll, makes it a definite 3 of, just for that easiness of being able to thin out the deck. And that's why you run 3 for more and more search options. I also run 2 Shaddoll Hedgehog. With this card, when it's flipped, you can add a Shaddoll spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add 1 Shaddoll monster from your deck to your hand except for a Shaddoll Hedgehog. So more search power. That's why we're running 2 of this card. But once again, you're mostly going to use it for the option of sending to the graveyard, because then you have access to plenty of your other Shaddoll monsters depending on the search you need for some of your upcoming plays also. And for some of the lower numbers, I run 1 Shaddoll Dragon and 1 Shaddoll Beast. I don't run Falco anymore. You really don't have a need for special summoning onto the field, as, basically relying on Shaddoll Wendy is a much better play for the special summon. But Shaddoll Beast still gives you draw power, and then just being able to potentially have that draw power sent off of a Squamata play, and Dragon being able to destroy a spell or trap, or having a bounce effect with the flip effect. I feel like they're just one-ofs that can happen and resolve pretty easily in a game, and that's really all you'll need from each of them. With some of the other numbers for the newer Shaddoll cards from the structure deck, I thought I had 3 Shaddoll Wendy, but I don't know where I put the third one, so I'm just substituting with 1 Nail Shaddoll Ariel for the time being. You definitely want to run 3 Wendy, though. With its flip effect, you can special summon 1 Shaddoll monster from your deck in face up or face down defense position, except for Shaddoll Wendy. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon 1 Shaddoll monster from your deck in face down defense position, except for Shaddoll Wendy. You can only use 1 Shaddoll Wendy effect per turn, only once that turn. So like I said, this is a way better Falco. Falco, you had to work with the graveyard. This card just works with any of the different Shaddoll monsters you have in your deck. Being able to set up some of the bigger boss monster ones makes it all the better for more and more monster setup on the field, because not only that, a good majority of our fusions will rely on that, but our 1 Shaddoll Link monster, Shaddoll Construct, can also come in handy for that play. And with the other Shaddoll being Nail Shaddoll Ariel, I do still run 1 copy of this card, being the water target for not only basically our different attributes for El Shaddoll Alp Cologne, or just going into El Shaddoll Anoyalitis, or Anoyalitis. This is definitely 1 Anoyalitis. There, I hopefully got as close as I could. We'll get back to that with the extra deck. But with Ariel, you can target 1 of your banished Shaddoll monsters, special summon it in face up or face down defense position. It's a little more situational, but if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target up to 3 cards in your graveyard, banish them. You can only use 1 Nail Shaddoll effect per turn, only once that turn. So not only your graveyard, but your opponent's also being able to disrupt some of their plays, but the banish recycle can come in handy if you were to summon this back onto the field and then reflip to add the ones you banished, sent back to the graveyard to reactivate their own effects. And I also, ideally you can run 3 Mathematician, but also you can run Armageddon Knight as kind of a different card to rely on. When it is normal summon, you can send 1 level 4 or lower monster from your deck to the graveyard, and when this card is destroyed by battle, you can draw a card. Not only is Mathematician an Earth attribute monster to work with Shekinaga, but also Armageddon Knight can really only hit the Dark attribute monsters, where, you know, in this deck we have Earth, Fire, and also Wind for different options, but also being able to rely on the Scent effect and then draw power potentially also is a great card to open up, because then you can just have control of any of the majority of the different Shaddoll monsters we run in the deck altogether. For more of the light options, I know some people run the Magistus cards as added backup, but for those of you not looking to run that engine in the deck, I'm just running the Perfomage engine, being a light attribute, gives us our targets if we were to go into El Shaddoll Construct, and with it you just have special summon options. If you send Trick Clown with Shaddoll Fusion, you can special summon it back onto the field to reuse for other extra deck plays, or just searching it out for Damage Juggler gives you another additional monster to use for them, and also just opening up Damage Juggler in your hand can protect you from battle damage against your opponent, because you go big with the plays in this deck, but you really do revolve around your monsters for a lot of the protection against your opponent also. And then as for the hand traps, we definitely have space for a good number of hand traps, with a lot of these plays in this deck just revolving on a couple cards. So when you open up the hand traps, it's good just to stop some of your opponent's plays. So 3 Ash Blossom and 3 Effect Veiler for the hand traps of choice. If you want to try out Nibiru instead of Effect Veiler, that can always be another one, because even if Nibiru takes away a good number of your monsters, you can still recover pretty easily with, you know, just some of the spells in your hand and the fusion plays you can do later on. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. One of the main spells in the deck is Shaddoll Fusion. You fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion material. If your opponent controls a monster that's special summon from the extra deck, you can also use monsters in your deck as fusion material. So with it, you can just have this card be a 1-card fusion summon. And not only that, with the fusion summon, you'll be setting up, you know, your Shaddoll monsters of choice depending on which extra deck monster you go into. So being able to then have those additional Shaddoll effects, whether it be draw power from Beast, set up from your El Shaddoll Wendy, or even just protection or, you know, negation for some of your opponent's monsters on the field with Genius. You have all these options available to you with this card, and then easy access to your boss monsters in the extra deck. For more plays during the battle phase, I also run 3 El Shaddoll Fusion. Being a quick play spell, you fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. So with it, you can attack with some of your bigger Shaddoll monsters on the field, and then use El Shaddoll Fusion to basically fuse into a different monster that can attack during the battle phase also, and also resolve other effects like the Shaddoll sent to the graveyard to recycle back other fusion spell cards to your hand to reuse, or even some of the traps. And then the same play also comes in handy with super polymerization. Now, we have a majority of cards in the extra deck with the, other requirements just being like an earth attribute monster or even just a fire attribute. You name it, we have all the different options in the extra deck to rely on for these different plays. So being able to just take all of our opponent's resources along with our Shaddoll monsters with super polymerization and not have them, able to activate anything in response makes this a definite, staple in the deck to use. It's just that good. It sets up other Shaddolls in your graveyard, and then you just have that other fusion monster and the same speed of power as Shaddoll Fusion during the battle phase. With the final one-ofs for the deck just being one Call by the Grave to shut down our opponent's plays, and the one Foolish Burial to set up any Shaddoll of choice from our main deck into the graveyard. And then as for the traps, I run 2 Shaddoll Schism with this card, or Shaddoll Schism, I believe is how you pronounce it. During the main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your field or graveyard, but it cannot attack directly. Then you can send 1 to your graveyard, 1 monster your opponent controls with the same attribute as that fusion monster. So being able to get rid of an opponent's resource and the fact that this is a continuous trap gives you more fusion options if you're out of resources for some of your other spells. The banish definitely comes in handy because then you can just recycle with cards like Nail Shaddoll, Ariel back to your graveyard to reuse. But using those resources from the graveyard is definitely needed because the banish just from your field or graveyard can give you resources in the graveyard that you may have already used for other plays. And then lastly, just 1 Shaddoll Core. I like this card to count just for all the different attributes as well when we summon it. And then just another option if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect to target 1 Shaddoll spell or trap card in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. So you can even just send this card off of Squamata and then use the Squamata to send this card, and after doing so, recycle any of your other Shaddoll spells that may be in your graveyard back to your hand for you to reuse. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I run 3 Shaddoll Construct. Now, this can always be, mixed around with some of the other Shaddolls we run in the deck. You can even drop down to 2 and put in the wind attribute option for the extra deck. I don't have Wendy's Fusion in here, but still, player preference if you wanted to add it in, just to have the wind attribute as well in the extra deck. But Construct, being able to send a card when it is Fusion Summoned, to send 1 Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard, and basically being able to destroy any monster that battles with it that is special summoned, and also when it's sent to the graveyard having the spell and trap recycle. Having 2800 attack and just needing 1 Shaddoll monster and 1 light monster means you take the majority of your opponent's light monsters for resources when you use super polymerization or any of your Perfumage or even Effect Veiler if need be against it. I also run 1 Shaddoll Window, needing the dark attribute in 1 Shaddoll. It restricts special summons. I really feel you only need 1 of it because once you have this card set up on the field, it's really all you're going to be using it for, stopping your opponent's plays until you can summon out your own, each player being only able to summon with a special summon once per turn. And most of the time your opponent has to summon a monster, then special summon 1 more, and then that's it. They need that to go into their link play next or any of their extra deck plays. I also run 2 Shaddoll Shekinaga, with Genius being the main focus for the new deck as well. This is a big play to go off of that I spoke of before, and if you wanted to drop the number of this for a second window, this can be one of the numbers you take out. I also run 1 Shaddoll Apkalon, being the 2 Shaddoll monsters with different attributes, and with this card being able to have different options for special summoning resources back on the field and cannot be destroyed by battle, more protection, along with the fact that window can't be destroyed by card effects. If this card is sent to the graveyard, having the same recycle power makes it all the better. I also run 1 Shaddoll Grista and 1 of the Shaddoll Enoyelatilis, or I think I hopefully got a little better that time. With this one, restricting special summoning from spells, and also Grista focusing more on negation against your opponent, but the fire and water attributes come in handy also depending on the opponent you're going up against. For the link monsters, I run 1 Shaddoll Construct, just need 2 flip monsters to make it. A good majority of the deck revolves around this, and also most of the time, you want to try and summon this card out with a link summon into the main monster zone to focus on the arrows. But during your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion from your extra deck by using cards from your hand or field as fusion material. So being able to add backup fusion if you don't have the fusion card, as long as you have monsters to go into this card, can rely on that play. And being able to send a Shaddoll card from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard to special summon this card means that you get special summon it back on the field, giving you arrow resources basically in the main monster zone for you to use that fusion play. For the rest of the link monsters, I run 1 Cross Shield Sheep, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, and also 1 Selene, Queen Master of Magicians. Just great special summon option with our spellcasters in the deck. And lastly, 1 Saryuja. If you didn't want to try out Saryuja, you can also try Borreload or even Nightmare Unicorn as a different option for a Link 3. But that is it for the deck profile. Some of the bigger plays, once again, go off of your opponent having special summons. If your opponent has an extra deck monster, activating Shaddoll Fusion will give you access to the good majority of different plays, just being able to send a tribute of choice in a Shaddoll monster to then go for the extra deck monster you want to summon out, and then benefiting from what you send. Cards like Hollow will send more cards depending on the attribute, but Squamata being able to send additional Shaddoll cards to the graveyard can give you more special summon options from there, and then more cards to play off of when you send Wendy, being able to special summon the Shaddoll from your deck and face down defense position, which will not worry because then you'll be able to summon that monster and still have the option, because you know what the card is on the field, to use that monster as a resource for Shaddoll Fusion for the fusion play. But until next time, once again, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I'm still working on plenty of the decks from the Ghost from the Past set. We'll see when some of those other deck profiles can come out. I need to get some more of the cards before I can fully work on them. But until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.